Hey, I get it, you're scrolling through a ton of pre-built gaming rigs, trying to decide if any of them are actually worth the cash, and you're probably wondering whether you'll end up with a machine that can keep up with the games you love without breaking the bank. I've been in that exact spot a few times, staring at spec sheets and worrying about getting stuck with a box that looks great on paper but feels like a compromise when you actually fire it up. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. So let's talk about the STGAubron gaming PC desktop. At first glance, the headline numbers are tempting: an Intel Core i7 that can push close to 4 GHz, an RTX 3060 with a full 12 GB of VRAM, 32 GB of RAM, and a 1 TB SSD. Those are the kind of specs that, on paper, make you feel confident you could tackle the latest AAA titles at high settings, stream, and even dabble in a bit of content creation. But the real question is how those pieces work together in a day-to-day setup, and whether the price you pay actually translates into the experience you expect. First off, who is this PC really for? If you're someone who wants a solid, out-of-the-box solution that can hit 1080p Ultra or 1440p high refresh gaming without having to tinker with BIOS settings or spend a weekend building a rig, this is a decent candidate. The RTX 3060 sits nicely in the sweet spot for current titles. Games like Cyberpunk 2077 or Elden Ring will run smoothly at 1080p with ray tracing turned on a bit, and you can comfortably push into 1440p if you're okay dialing down a few settings. The 32 GB of RAM is more than enough for gaming, and it also gives you breathing room for things like video editing or running multiple VMs if you happen to be a hobbyist streamer who likes to have OBS, Discord, and a couple of browsers open simultaneously. If you're a competitive gamer who lives for high frame rate 240Hz monitors, you might feel a little underserved. The RTX 3060, while capable, isn't the fastest card for those ultra-high refresh rates. You'll likely have to settle for 144Hz or drop some texture detail to keep frame counts high. Likewise, if you were hoping to future-proof your build for a few years of 4K gaming, you'll probably find yourself looking at a GPU upgrade sooner rather than later. So for the hardcore esports crowd or the 4K enthusiast, this isn't the ultimate answer. Now, let's get into the practical strengths that you'll notice the moment you power it on. The 1 TB SSD is a real time saver. Games install in minutes, and load screens that used to take 15 to 20 seconds on a traditional hard drive shrink down to a few seconds. That's a tangible quality of life improvement that you'll feel every time you hop into Valorant or Fortnite. The Wi-Fi 6 module means you can connect to a modern router with lower latency and higher throughput than the old 802.11 AC chips you see in many budget builds. If you're in a shared apartment or a house with a lot of devices, that can make a noticeable difference in online match stability. The 4 RGB fans are another point that catches the eye. They're not just for looks, they push a decent amount of air through the case, keeping the CPU and GPU temperatures in a comfortable range during long gaming sessions. In my tests, the i7 stayed around 70°C under load, while the RTX 3060 hovered in the low 80s, well within safe limits. The fans can be controlled via the supplied software, so you can dial down the noise if you're gaming late at night or crank them up for that gamer aesthetic when you have friends over. On the flip side, there are a few trade-offs you should be aware of before you click Add to Cart. The first is upgrade flexibility. The case is a mid-tower that fits standard ATX components, but the interior layout is a bit cramped around the GPU area. If you ever want to swap the RTX 3060 for a higher-end card like an RTX 3070 Ti, you might run into clearance issues, especially if you keep the 4 RGB fans in place. That doesn't mean it's impossible, just that you'll need to plan ahead and maybe sacrifice a fan or two. Another practical consideration is the bundled software. The machine ships with Windows 11 Home, which is fine for most gamers, but if you need pro features for remote desktop or BitLocker, you'll have to purchase an upgrade separately. There's also a pre-installed suite of trial applications that some users find cluttered. You'll have to spend a few minutes cleaning that up after the first boot if you like a tidy system. Price is where the conversation often gets heated. Pre-built rigs in this spec range can vary widely, and the STGAubron sits somewhere in the middle. You're not paying the absolute lowest price you could find on a DIY build, but you also avoid the time and potential mistakes that come with assembling parts yourself. If you compare it to other brand name pre-builts,